Thank you, Victoria. I'm going to start by saying anybody who needs inspiration should go down to the Bromley by Bow Centre. And the other thing which Andrew has just reminded me is the importance of starting there, because in Croydon we're looking at our Building Schools for the Future programme. We're just starting it, and with the community in mind we've decided to give 200 square metres per school over to the community. And one thing I can tell you is the one thing they won't need is 200 square metres of space, because we haven't even asked them yet. And actually, to impose that kind of rigidity, this is going to be our solution, is the opposite of the solution. So I have learned one thing: my BSF team is coming down to see the Bromley by Bow Centre. But moving on to Croydon, I'm actually going to go to an upper level again, well, I entirely agree with Andrew. Actually, in Croydon, we've got a slightly different problem. I'm going to start a little bit about the evolution of the place we have, and the place we have is currently in trouble. Croydon actually does have some history. If you've been to Croydon Town Centre, you might think that it was invented in the 1960s, but actually in the 15th century, the Archbishop of Canterbury had his holiday home there, which is the illustration you can see. In the early part of the last century, it was very much a provincial town on the edge of London, probably quite detached from London actually, operating very much as a town in its own right. And then it became a development focus in the late 1950s. And actually what happened was there was a moratorium on building offices in the centre of London. You couldn't build office space, you couldn't build new office space. They needed office space in the 1960s, they needed modern office space because technology was beginning to change, the needs were different, so the offices had to go somewhere, and where they went was Croydon. So the whole thing was based on a planning policy. Planning policy changed about 5 years later, and therefore the need for Croydon in the way that they had invented it finished. Planning can destroy a place as well as actually create a place, just through a policy change. So today we have an office centre, but we also have 1 million square feet of offices that is vacant in that town centre, and only 300 people live in that central area that you can see, which adds up to a problem. The other problem we've had over the last 15 years is the way people have tried to solve this is by having visions, and boy have we had some visions. This is one from the 1990s, mid-1990s, where they thought it would be good to flood the area. Actually, it floods by itself. You don't have to bring it, but it's can you challenge to an opportunity? I'm not really sure this was the way forward. A whole series of different visions here, and I have to be absolutely honest, I can't remember which ones they are. But the one was an ill-fated down on the bottom right-hand corner there, an ill-fated attempt by Croydon Council to actually bring a stadium. And they carried on, even after the O2 was conceived and built and occupied, they carried on trying to build a stadium. It got absolutely nowhere, but it cost an awful lot of money to fight the various different appeals, I can't remember, but various other different ones. And then another one which actually was much more radical, which was done about 4 or 5 years ago, and this was the Will Alsop Third City Vision. Very, very grand, but actually had some good ideas in it. If you actually take out some of the wackier bits, which good old Will Alsop always puts into his visions, actually there were some really good ideas. But we have a challenge. We've actually got to get Croydon today actually to get something out of those visions. And over the 15 years that these visions have dominated things, we've gone down, we've had absolutely no economic recovery at all. The rest of London's been in boom time up until a couple of years ago. Bypassed Croydon, we've lost about 10,000 jobs in Croydon over the last 10 years or so. So it's got its set pieces. There's some very attractive 1960s buildings and slightly earlier buildings there. There's also some diabolical ones. There's the Wellesley Road, which is a urban motorway to nowhere that goes straight through the middle of Croydon and achieves very little other than significant severance and traffic pollution. Actually what it does is it carries traffic from the south to the car parks in the north and then back again. It's really a very large access to car parks in the wrong part of town that we'd really rather weren't there anyway. And this is the kind of urban realm that we've got dominating. This is the middle of Croydon, absolute centre of Croydon. And that's another view of it. That is the location of most of our 1 million square feet of vacant office space just behind the Nestle Tower. And funnily enough, Nestle are saying that they might pull out as a result of it. So we're focusing then on broken places, and we do need to go to master planning to do that. But what we're not going to do is vision and master plan the entire area of Croydon Town Centre, because it's too big. And we've got to get a sense of place back into that, and the place has to be more localised. So we've broken it down into some smaller areas. And at the moment, we're focusing on 5. We've got, up at the top there in blue, we've got West Croydon, which is the area around West Croydon Station, which is going to benefit from the East London line, the London Underground, from May of this year. In lime green, going right through the middle, is the Spine, Wellesley Road, which is currently the urban motorway. The area around Croydon Station, very important to us. If you think about arriving at a place being a bit like your first date, arriving at Croydon Station is really, you've lost it at the first, as soon as you got off the train. So it's really not helpful. The area around the College Green, as we call it, is actually quite an interesting area. It's got some really good quality buildings, but they include the Fairfield Hall, which is a very interesting building, but it has some huge problems if we're going to retain it and restore it to its glory. Probably about £50 million worth of investment required. I don't think we can find that kind of money, so we've got to look at some way of actually getting the spirit of the Fairfield Halls without the cost. And then Mid-Croydon was the area I showed you before, and that's the real challenge. We've had Boris Johnson down today to try and help us with the huge challenge that is Mid-Croydon. So, very quickly, East Croydon Master Plan. Good young team on it, Studio, Great West, some of you may have worked with. East Croydon is the one we started on first, and we're setting the scene really for how we're doing it, and that is we're doing it with the people who own the land, the people who live around there. So it's a slightly larger scale than Andrew was talking about at Bromley by Bow, but the principle is the same. Don't do it to these areas. It's Stanhope and Mentor and the Royal Mail that own the land. We're not going to do anything unless they are actually bought into the programme. So the stakeholder group was those people. They own the product. And what we've got out of that is an assessment of what the strategic opportunities are for all of us in terms of the new city. But we want to get the railway station. We also want to get it soon. And one of the problems in Croydon was that always the vision took over, and you thought, well, you could have a huge tower block, and it was, sort of £150 million of investment. And Croydon doesn't have the values to do that. So we're starting at a smaller scale, actually with a new footbridge and a new station entrance, and tarting up the actual initial entrance and getting a pedestrian loop, mending, I'll come on to in a minute, mending the sort of latent grid pattern which is there in Croydon, and reinstating the pedestrian routes that have been obliterated and chewing them up a bit. So very much thinking about how are people going to move around and through and use the station. So with the first phase that we're actually embarking on in the next 12 months or so is not, by station terms, is not a huge amount of investment. It's about £15 million. But alongside the investment going on either side from the private sector, we hope, if we can resolve the central station area, then we think actually we'll get an outcome pretty quickly. An outcome in 3 or 4 years is not bad in planning terms, and certainly not bad in Croydon terms. So West Croydon. West Croydon is a slightly more complex one. Again, we've got a young team, East. We have to work on this. We've got East at West Croydon and Studio West at East Croydon, but we'll same set of principles behind the partners who are working with us on it. It's the landowners who have an interest in actually just raising the values and getting something done in the area. Plus, of course, it's a major transport node, so we've got Transport for London, and I have to say that Transport for London in the last couple of years have really changed some of their approaches to town planning and design in particular, and we've found them really good to work with on some of these station opportunities. It will be a new gateway, a new doorway to Croydon Town Centre because of the East London line coming in. But we also need to integrate it much more with the town centre. I really like West Croydon. It's probably because most of my career has been in East London. What West Croydon has is that link with real communities. You're sort of getting to the edge of the 1960s tower blocks, and you're getting to something which is much grittier. It's the edge of one of Croydon's most deprived areas, but there's some fantastic street stalls along the London Road up there. And what we need to do is mend that, make the two parts of these different communities actually work together. There's some really good opportunities for some family housing in the area around West Croydon. There's also an opportunity to make the station work better, to get the integration between the bus station, the tram which passes through, the railway as it is now, the new East London line when it comes in, get a much better setting for the church, which is one of the finest buildings in Croydon Town Centre, and really just create something with a much finer grain to it. And we can also market. We can get some value in there, which you have to do to make any of this happen. We think we can get some value with 4 fairly slender residential blocks, and that would really be a mark to a gateway to the town centre.